Once the conceptualization is ready, with well-designed research questions and sub-questions, then it's time to go to the technical part, the technical research design of a research project. Here we should find adequate tools and methods to answer the questions. And there are a series of decisions that we should take. The first one is the research strategy, then materials, and finally the planning. Let's start with the research strategy. What are precisely those decisions that we should take? 3 decisions are proposed by the authors of the book. The first one in terms of breadth or depth. The second one in terms of quantitative or qualitative. And finally, whether this is going to be a desk research or an empirical research. Now, when preparing your case, your synthesis case, connected to this problem that was given to you, a problem that is highly designed or is fundamental research, I strongly recommend not only ticking the boxes for these decisions. Of course, it's good to know whether it's qualitative or quantitative. I have to say that most of them, if not all of them, are actually quantitative because of the nature of the course unit, because of the nature of the program you are studying. And there is probably a decision that should be taken in terms of desk research or empirical research. Are you going to dig only into the literature, or are you going to propose a sort of experimental setup? Or are you proposing the test of a theory, or bringing new ideas, new knowledge to existing theories? We need to be very specific, and that depends on your case. Okay, one of the first decisions is breadth or depth, and it depends on the level of generalization you want to reach. So a wider, large-scale generalization of results, it's connected to breadth. But if you really want to reach generalization, but to a lesser extent, with a very particular system, then it means that you are dealing with depth. The second decision is about the nature of the research and the strategy to follow, whether it's quantitative or qualitative, whether there is more verbosity or contemplation in terms of qualitative type of research, or quantitative. Are there experiments? Are there mathematical optimization? Is there an experimental setup in terms of tables, numbers, calculations? What are those methods and tools inspired by literature that will help you out to answer the questions and sub-questions to reach the objective? All the cases, for instance, all the cases in the course unit for the synthesis part are meant to be quantitative. But later on, of course, in the professional life, you may face projects that are more qualitative based. The third key decision to be taken is about the type of research in terms of empirical or desk. Empirical meaning the gathering and generation of your own data based on experiments, based on simulations, based on the test of a prototype or a toolbox. The data is not there, so you must produce the data and then also make use of very specific tools to analyze the data and to draw conclusions. Furthermore, you can use data that already exist, data that are in databases from bibliography, from clouds. Now, this is not black and white. Nowadays, you can also face a type of project where the amount of data coming from the literature or the amount of data from the bases is not enough. Then, most probably, you need to create your own model, you generate your own data, and then you can compare both sets of data. This is more realistic. But certainly, it's interesting to consider the question whether it's highly oriented to only research in terms of literature, or whether you need to build up things and you need to generate your own data. Now, one more time. Just saying in your research plan that your project is desk research is not enough. You need to bring those key papers, that will provide very specific types of methods and tools. Only saying empirical research is not enough either. You really need to say what's the type of prototype that will solve the problem, that will answer the question, reach the objective. What sort of validation method are you going to use? Statistical analysis? Or gathering new data from your simulation? Or gathering new data from the experimental setup? Now you need to be very specific. That depends a lot on the type of project you are dealing with. Also connected to the three main questions that you should answer towards the definition of your research strategies are these ones in terms of research units, sources, or literature. The nature of the data. Now, you have a sub-question that should be answered. That sub-question is connected to a stepping stone. And in order to reach that stepping stone, you need to bring insights from other researchers or engineers. And those insights, in principle, should be already published in scientific literature, journals, papers, official reports. Goes beyond a web page. It really needs to be scientific literature with a rigorous method or tool used to answer the question. That's what we mean with the strategies here. What's going to be your strategy for the case that you are dealing with? Where can I see the paper that has inspired that strategy? And those are common questions that you will face during your oral examination, of course. You need to defend your assumptions. And you need to defend also the sources for those assumptions. The authors of the book provided 5 major strategies to be used for your research project: surveys, experiments, case studies, ground theory approach, and desk research. Now recall that the book is written in the context mostly in social sciences, and we need to adapt this context to engineering projects and to fundamental research projects. Certainly, it's good to know the opinion of the stakeholders and to translate them into technical requirements. Now, those requirements, in principle, will be reached with your design. Those requirements will be reached with the answering of the fundamental question in case of a theory-oriented research. But here we want to know, what's the nature of the experiment? Who else has done a similar experiment? It was part of the same context or a different context, in case experimentation is highly connected to your case or to the problem you are dealing with, either for the course unit or for your professional life. Probably only desk research is enough, because we are trying to understand a theory and there is a fundamental question in that theory. And so the answer could be already there in literature. But certainly for the course unit and for your cases, I would say that desk research is not enough. A plan has to be clear and has to be designed in terms of those questions that you need to answer and those the stepping stones that you need to reach. Let's take a look at this table. This table represents the categorization of types of projects that were executed in the TU Delft. We go from descriptive knowledge, design, up to engineering optimization or even mathematics. Those were more than 80 projects, and there was an analysis of during different years by this Professor Swart and his colleague De Vries. Now, for instance, if we go to descriptive knowledge, it was one type of project. The main goal for those projects was the true world descriptions, and most of the time they were using just empirical cycle. But if we go to engineering optimization of different types of systems, then we go to optimization progression. That's the method connected to the goal, very specific optimizations. Now, we can also see the mathematics projects, the mathematic-oriented type of projects. Here, we make use of heuristics, knowledge that is already there, and we adapt that knowledge in order to reach a mathematical claim or a new mathematical object. Most of our projects in the course unit are in terms of design, where we will reach an artifact such that that artifact will solve our problem. Most of the projects, but not all of them. Some of them are actually in the category of descriptive knowledge or engineering optimization. Let's not forget the bigger picture. And it's not only about deciding on the three main questions: breadth or depth, quantitative or qualitative, or empirical or non-empirical research. But also we should take into account that one or more strategies are suitable for our own specific research. And even that, we can always take different variants. Now it's an iterative process. Once you are in depth into the research, you will know that some strategies need to be redefined. Some questions need to be rewritten, and even the objective has to be sometimes adapted towards the solution of the problem or answering the fundamental question.